Okay, it's 12 o'clock, so let's go ahead and kick off our Business Builder webinar, how to build the perfect team for your business. And I am so excited because today we have licensed professional counselor Karla Hardin joining us. So just a few key items before we get started. We're going to keep everybody muted, and you can feel free to pop in any questions through the chat or the Q&A. And we will try our best to take some throughout the presentation, but we may hold them till the end of the presentation, and Philip and Karla can answer them then. So let me go ahead and introduce your host for today, Phillip Long. He is a technologist and entrepreneur, and he specializes in providing technology solutions and security consulting to businesses along the Gulf Coast. So he's been in the IT industry for over 21 years. He has 600 plus clients from Gulfport to Dothan, Montgomery, all in there over to Pensacola. He's the current owner of 5 businesses and a certified information system security professional, which is CISSP, as well as his designation for CMMC. So I am going to hand this over to Philip.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Karla, for joining us. Thank you, Christy, for all the work you do to get all this put together. And I'm going to introduce Karla Hardin. She is, of course, a licensed professional counselor. She is got a wealth of information that she's going to share with us today. I'm really excited about this webinar, probably more so than I've been about others. And it's really, I guess, outside of my field in a way. So it's interesting, but there's going to be some good stuff. But she has a master's degree in science from Mississippi College in mental health and behavioral health, over 20 years experience counseling in Mississippi and Alabama. She currently is practicing in Fairhope, Alabama, and she hosts occasional workshops throughout the country. So thank you so much, Karla, for joining us.
So glad to be here, Philip. Always fun.
Yeah, for sure. And this is really, a great topic. I think it's kind of like one of those core things to me that you have to get right in order to get the business right. So it's a fundamental component. So we're going to start it off. We want to talk about, what are some things. We're going to do a quick poll on what are things that you guys are, struggling with most when it comes to building a team. We've just got one poll, and I'm going to launch it. And is it the actual hiring? Is it the actual management? Is it your overall culture, your technology, or really you've got problems in all of those areas? So we'll open that up for a second and see what we get there. And really, I'll talk for just a second on that. And really, each one of those is a major component whenever it comes to overall, like what I call operational maturity level. And for hiring, I'll quickly say you need to always have something outgoing. And it looks like pretty much everybody is having problem more in the managing component of things. So I'll end that poll. And yeah, everyone who responded are all having trouble with the management. And Karla, what's that say to you?
Well, it says what we all sort of know. Our problem is we have to work with people. And so we're always going to hit that dynamic personalities, conflict, approach to solutions. And then as a leader, you're supposed to be corralling and managing all those differences. And sometimes it feels like, you're doing the buckshot method. You're just throwing a lot of things out there, hoping something will hit and work, but it doesn't feel in control. It doesn't feel like we know what to do with all these dynamics.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that as well today. And, the next slide talks about, how to find the, and it's coming off the thing there for me. But how to find the right employees is what the text there says is, how do we find that right employee? Because like I said earlier, this is the fundamental foundation to what we're dealing with is people, and businesses won't run without people. And a lot of times I know I have, is I focus a lot on the, on the nuts and bolts of the business. What problem am I solving? And we'll overlook the people. And I know you've seen that, Karla. What's your take on, some things? And we're going to dig in a little bit about how to find the right people.
Right. Well, you're exactly right, Philip. It is the foundational block because, it doesn't matter if I just like a person. It doesn't matter if I feel like I can influence them through that. If they fundamentally aren't a team player or they're not qualified to be in the position, I need to know that before I hire them on. And to me, I see a lot of people hire because they feel desperate. They need to fill that slot, or they just sort of like the person. And I think you've just got to do your due diligence and go deeper than that before you set the whole company up for management problems.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, and those things are hard, sometimes like you wouldn't think it would be that hard, but you definitely have to be extremely intentional. And one of the things that I think about is like, in order to make good decisions, in order to be able to lead, you really have to know yourself. I think it was Joe Rogan on a podcast. He said it would be better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think about that a lot. And even, in the Bible, it talks about the humble or the meek shall inherit the earth. And I think about that like being maybe that word meek isn't understood well, because to me, it links directly to being completely prepared, being, really in a position of strength, but keeping your sword sheathed. You don't ever want to pull the sword out. You want to be able to manage things from a perspective of strength and wisdom and long suffering, all those things, and not go to chopping heads too quick. But yet you also have to make yourself very vulnerable. And we think, oh, this guy's brave. Well, the opposite side of bravery is vulnerability. And everybody wants to be brave, but nobody wants to be vulnerable. So, and we're going to talk about like personality assessments, or, kind of first understanding yourself. And I'll take the first part of this. This is some stuff that we do. And we have these little plaques hanging around on people's desks. And we use different tools to do this, but it helps you identify with yourself. And then, it also helps others to know how you're kind of wired. And there's no better profile or no better personality per se on one person than the other. And I'm going to let you go first, and I'm going to come back so I won't talk too much. And one of the tools that Karla uses, and she's actually done this with my whole team, and it was really so enlightening, probably one of the best kind of team building events that we've ever had as a company, and it's called the Enneagram. So Karla, take that away for me.
Well, I love assessments, and I want to just reinforce what you said a second ago, Philip. Self-awareness is the critical ingredient for you as a manager, and helping develop self-awareness in your employees is really the road to success, both personally and business-wise. So obviously in my practice, but even in a corporate business setting, I would always have in the back of my mind, how can I create better self-awareness? Because here's the reason: you can't change something you don't know. Yeah. Like, if I don't know I'm coming across, like a bully, I don't know to change that. So I know that the growth and people being able to work together cannot happen without self-awareness. The Enneagram is, I'm not going to lie, it's just one of my faves. And I'm trained in a lot of different testings, as you can imagine. But if I could only pick two that I would use in personal and professional settings, it would be the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs, because they both sort of encapsulate the whole person. And y'all have heard that expression, nature versus nurture. And we know how important that is. And that's always the question, which is it, nature or nurture? The Myers-Briggs actually types your nature. It's sort of what you came with. The Enneagram types your nurture, what shaped you in good ways and not so good ways, because those are what's actually showing up in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with that 1,000% with because I saw that in the Enneagram with even who I am, and it kind of links to possible things that happened in your past that may have led you to be a certain type, if it were. And we won't go through all the types, that's not the point here, but there are tools out there and they're very interesting, they're very effective. I have used the DISC, and to me, it stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. And it's just another behavioral. This is more nature, the same, like, not nurture. And to me, it's like a stripped down version of Myers-Briggs. Kind of simple.
Is. I've used that and I love that test too. And I know I use that a lot. And it's great for a quick, sort of, whoa, let me just see what they walk in the door and lead with. Because we all lead with something. And I do love the DISC from that standpoint as well.
And it's kind of more, towards business. You got your conductors, you got your supporters, coordinators, so that you kind of see. And like for me, if I got somebody coming in sales, wanting a sales job, and I do a DISC profile and they're an analyzer, they're not going to probably be able to quickly make a decision. They're not going to be heavily, highly communicative. So these are things that are like on a down, I call it like down and dirty, just bang. I'll know whether, where they can be used, or if I have a person on the team and they're not quite fitting their role, I can look back on those things and say, no wonder. And I've heard that if you put somebody who is way outside of their kind of nature, who they are, it puts a lot of stress on them.
That's exactly accurate. And again, that goes back to what you're saying, self-awareness. So we want the employee to have self-awareness. We want to have self-awareness, but then it's our job in leadership to work with those components to set the whole team up for success and how to utilize that knowledge of themselves as well as the knowledge of the other teammates.
Yes, for sure. That's it's so important. They have some other ones. They have one that has to do with what I like to do with the DISC. I like to give it, of course, I just all information. We're transparent. The employee gets their whole write up, and then I say, look, go take it to your spouse or your family or somebody who is close to you and let them read it. And it's really amazing that off of just that short of a little assessment, those questions that are asked, I say it's probably 85, 90% accurate whenever, and through the eyes of someone else. And I've heard people say, yeah, I don't think that's me. And they'll hand it to someone else and say, no, that's you. So really crazy. And they have another one that is interesting that talks about motivators. And again, mine is only anecdotal on very small slivers compared to what Karla does. But what I notice about that stands out to me about motivators is a lot of people really don't know what motivates them.
Oh, that's so important too.
Yeah.
Because that's where the Enneagram also really helps. The Enneagram is helping you understand why you are motivated in a certain way.
Yeah.
And because of what's happened in your past childhood growing up, there's certain things that scare you and certain things you don't ever want to happen again. And that ends up becoming your motivation. I don't want to get hurt. Therefore, I'm going to put on a tough thing, or I don't want to be criticized. Therefore, I'm going to put on high performance so that someone, I don't leave any room for that.
Yeah. Or you don't actually put yourself out there.
Exactly.
yeah, you hold back whenever because you're scared to fail. And, there was some study I read a long time ago that I found interesting, was like really the super top of the class type people often don't go near as far as you think they would. And a lot of it gets down to where they've always been so super successful and they never want to fail. So, they hold back.
Right, exactly.
So
Well, oh,
go ahead.
define goals.
No,
Yeah,
you
love
you keep
this. Tell me
going.
about this one.
Yeah.
Well, no, I do think what we're saying is, even I'm thinking of your audience saying, how do we manage this? How do
Yes.
we manage this? And that's a legit question. And Philip, I was so impressed when I came into your company because you really create an environment to facilitate understanding one another, and you're real good at providing structure on those roles. And that's critical. You know, a little bit from me, I'm a real brain person. That's a lot of my training. And our brain needs pattern and it needs structure to feel safe. So if your style of management is chaotic or sort of flying by the seat of your pants, that may even be contributing to why your company, your people are a little sort of not working together, because their brains are looking for something predictable and structured that allows their brain to come down and rest. And then they're more in their prefrontal cortex where they can actually think their best, cooperate their best. But if we don't feel good structure, our anxiety comes up and we don't really bring our best self forward.
Yeah, I can see that. This, you're talking about defining roles, you know, and the reason I'm really open to things to a large degree is because I've just who I am is like a lifelong learner. And so, and you have to be careful sometimes because I'll lay that template of lifelong learning across to other people. I've made mistakes and thinking they're that way. So I have to be very systematic. And we'll kind of going back to profiles or behaviors, like I work with a lot of engineers, and like you would be it's just amazing that all the engineers have the same profile. I mean,
Yes.
literally, the people who apply for the job, come for the job, they have the profile to do this. And so, and mine is exactly the opposite. So it is a huge challenge for me, and I've just had to learn it, just really probably failing more than succeeding, and learning that you can't do that. Now, like my guys want to know what's going to happen. So I start to tell them I'm thinking about something. Then I say, I'm still thinking about it. And then I say, hey, I've put together a couple other guys and we're thinking about it together, like they're on their team. And then we'll say, we're going to do a demo and we're going to test, so what I used to would do, and I'd be like, yeah, cool. Cause if you looked at mine, I can change, like I could change right now. And if I didn't like it, I'd change again in a few minutes on an idea. And most people are not that way.
Well, it really, what you're saying is those are opportunities for friction
Oh, yeah.
within a team. You can imagine they're frustrated with you and you're frustrated, like, why can't y'all sort of be open and more flexible? And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so wishy-washy,
Yeah.
like land.
Yeah.
And that's where creating that mutual respect for the differences and strengths are really what I think management's challenge is. And it's sort of like your role has got to see everybody in their best light and help educate the team that we do need all those perspectives.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Philip, remember when we divided your team and I put hearts and heads and guts, which is Enneagram terminology, together. And they all their different angles, and you had to come up with 3 problems to solve in the company. And we only allowed 15 minutes for the exercise. And they then reported, and you were blown away. And we what my takeoff was that because we had those very different perspectives all working together, they saw things that you had been pondering and concerned about over time.
Yeah.
And that's the art and beauty of good management, is when you can pull the differences together and unite them as strengths.
Yeah. One thing that you just said about putting it in the best light, I think that right there is something I've seen you do, where, something that, I call it being able to have an idea in your head that you at first or don't agree with at all, whatever, you don't agree with it, but yet you're able to manage that, not to get so emotionally attached to it to where you can't hear the other side and you can't even see possibly opportunities. You don't all the way agree at all, but there may be some high points in the other person, what they're saying. And that, to me, that's that warrior. That's that guy that's got it. He's got some skills and he can stand in the trench right there for a minute without pulling out his sword and just take it and take it and take it and hold it and say, I see some good here, I see some good there, and try to work for the greater good. Where, man, I'm telling you, I probably have, maybe got 20 minutes worth of that knowledge in me. I wish I was so much better earlier in my life, because I could have handled things and it would have been a lot easier for everybody.
Well, I think we all, lead with what we're confident in and also what our strengths are. So, like you said earlier, I forget that people aren't always using the same paradigm I am, like, lifelong learner. Some people, that's not their MO. And so when you can pause, my husband uses a great statement, and he is also a counselor. He coaches men in executive settings, and he has some professional retreats for men. And his classic line, and we use it also in our marriage workshop, is get curious.
Yeah.
Instead of getting upset, get curious. So that when there's a problem in the office, either work's not getting done, there's conflict with personnel, don't come in and go try to fix it, even though I know that's what you like to do. Get curious. And curious questions sound like, hey, I'm curious. I'm not sure if I didn't communicate well or this wasn't clear, but I've noticed that this is sort of happening. What is your take on it? So that by curiosity, you're inviting a person to think with you versus come on the defense.
Yeah.
The minute we invite defense, we've got two kids in a sandbox throwing sand, So that's one of the little tips that I do think, if you can tuck away as a leader in your back pocket, is no matter what the situation, let me lead with curiosity, because I'm going to get them to join me in the problem solving if I am curious.
Yeah, I like that. And kind of just to what I was thinking in this defining roles, this slide was, my thought is that what I've seen anecdotally is that if you have somebody wearing too many hats, and a lot of times, especially younger companies, you got to wear all the hats, so it's hard. And as you get more operationally mature, you're able to you define and assign is what I call it. And if you don't do that, what'll happen is the person will do whichever one they're best at. If you got two major roles on them, and then the other one they'll fail at, or they'll underperform, maybe even on both of them, and ultimately they'll blame you. And so leadership has got to define that role and then also set realistic expectations with what that person can do. I think that's really important to get that right. And not everybody's like you. And, there's a lot of things you can do in 3 minutes and the other person can't. So getting we, instead of doing an org chart we do more of a responsibilities chart. And that's where this back end knowledge that we've talked about understanding what you're working with in the humanity and assigning things to them, responsibilities to them that they're going to excel at rather than, bogging them down.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And like choose leaders for managerial roles is really important, because this is probably one of my biggest things over the years, that you get somebody who's good at a job, and I think they call it the Peter factor or whatever. They just keep rising through the ranks, and all of a sudden they're running a department or something, and really they're great at their job, but they're not great at leading others. I'll use Michael Jordan as an example, an absolute phenomenal basketball player, but he was not a good coach.
Right, right. I do agree with that. And that's where, again, some of your testing, inventories are going to even help you recognize that early on, so that you don't put them in a position that is not going to be conducive for them to enjoy it and thrive in it, and others to follow them.
Yes.
Like in the Enneagram, uh, I always, there's aggressives, there's withdraws, and there's dependence. Those are the three stances individual has. Well, depending on the nature of the role that you need a leader to lead in, if you need them to sort of take charge, hey, get it moving, you're not going to want to put a dependent stance person in that role, because they're going to be trying to look at everybody else and not want to do something someone else isn't comfortable with. You're going to look for an aggressive type who says, no, I'll take the lead and take the charge. So it's those little self-assessment tips really do help us discern. Let's work with this person is very comfortable with.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about really how to get the most out of the team. And, to me, if you have to be ashamed of, wanting to really excel at what you do, or, or if it's like I had a partner at one point, and I always felt like he was not as driven as I am. And I always felt this bit of, I probably not even shared this often, but this what comes to mind is that, there's nothing wrong with trying to get the most out of your team. And I'm not talking about like, squeezing every ounce of everything out of people and neglecting them. I'm talking about and we'll talk further a little bit more about this later, but in this presentation, but how do you get the most? And there's nothing wrong with trying to be the best. And if you are that company's leader, and if I own this company and I say, hey, you know what, I want to be the best at this, I want to really be a top tier, there's nothing wrong with that. And you're not like a bad person, or you're not trying to squeeze the life out of people. You're just trying to be the best. And for me, I had a challenge with, like, almost like I was having to really go deep into explanation about why we want to be the best, and as if that's just not, that's our company, you know what I mean, that's our standard, that's who we are, kind of thing.
Well, I love that, Philip, because Nick Saban doesn't give any reason that he's trying to justify trying to be the best. Everybody assumes that in college sports, and no one's ashamed of that goal. Because that's what we're aiming at, the prize. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Why can't we? It even scripture, as you were, reminding us of, it says we all run to win.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so that's a wonderful freedom to embrace that. That doesn't mean you have to go do that. Some people, that's not their motivation. They may be more motivated by relationship, and they go, hey, it's not the win for me. It's just being with others, enjoying that fellowship. And that's fine. That's not a bad goal. But you, as the leader of your company, you do get to make that call. Each coach has a style of coaching, each business has a style of being led by who is their head. So I love that, Philip.
Yeah. The funny thing you said, talked about Nick Saban, I saw a little video meme type thing. And the interviewer asked him, you're whatever, I think he's like 71 or whatever he is, he says, are you getting tired of this? And Saban says, tired of what? Winning. So I thought that was so classic, I mean, that was just like, and again, he's not playing to play. And what I like about that mentality, this is me, is that you're never irrelevant. You're never, if you're always trying to do better, then there's always some cool stuff to do. It's interesting, it's engaging. It's not just like, going through the motions. And because if you put me in that position where I was a government worker with, stamping something, I'd
Yes.
last 15 minutes. I couldn't take it.
I wouldn't even last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You look at my Myers-Briggs and Enneagram. I I was asked, I had led a project back in Mississippi where it was sort of a big community-wide thing. And, we raised $250,000 and built a
Wow.
playground, coordinated like 3,000 people to work together to do this. Well, because, that had never happened in a community our size, I got a lot of recognition for that. So, of course, everybody wants me on their board.
Oh, yeah.
The chambers call me, this is called me. And so I had, naively, at that season in my life, I naively said, sure, I'll be on the board. Well, I went to I came onto the Chamber of Commerce board. Oh my gosh. I sat in there for 30 minutes and I thought, oh, I've made a drastic wrong decision here, because it was so not motivating for me, because they were talking about painting the parking lots. And I'm like, no, I'm not about painting parking lots. I'm about doing something that hadn't been done. So I do think that's what you're saying, is we really have to know the niche, not only of who we are, because if you're in a bad place managerially yourself and running your company is reflecting that.
Oh, for sure.
If I would have been leading that chamber board, they would have not been doing very well, because it was such a mismatch for me personally.
I like that. Another thing that I have learned over time is like creating that clear line of sight. And I'm going to talk about this on some other things that how I line things up. And it's like almost, to me, beyond what I should understand. It's almost like a gift, that I understand what I understand about this, and the way that I see it, I feel like it's just really awesome. But, having somebody, understand where they're going, like, we worked a lot, and initially we worked on our, like our mission statement and our vision statement stuff. And, we did it, and it's got a lot of cool words on there, but then we went back and redid it. And, we established really from the heart, almost like, where we want to go. And but you got to do that for every position.
Yes.
And you want to put things in control that they can control, so that they know at the end of the day. And like for me on Friday, some days, Friday afternoon, this is years back, I did a lot of traveling. I was out seeing clients all the time. And, on Friday, some weeks we had a good week, and I felt really good about things. And I really felt like, man, that was worth doing this week. I had that kind of, it was over, it was winding down, and I'm just like coming home, driving and thinking, and I'm like, man, that was a good deal. Now, how can I make everybody feel that, and, where they know that, they've done what they were required to do, and that they did a good job. So you want to have some ways where they understand what the goal is, how am I doing compared to the goal, and, almost at any moment they can know how they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's critical for feedback. And And I think all of us, that old adage, when you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
For sure.
And that is, it doesn't make us feel good when we don't know what we're actually aiming at. And I always think, like, when I go in for consultations and things like that, one of the first things I do is I say, this is too general. Your language here is too general. I need more specifics, because if I just say, I want everyone to get along, or I just want everyone to be on time, that's not a bad statement, but there's nothing clear about what that actually means. So I know that, you understand that, but it quickly unravels when
Yeah.
it is not clear.
Yeah. This next thing, it talks about pushing and pulling. And I don't know, I'd never heard these terms. And it's really crazy. I like to call it pulling and pushing. Pulling would be where you would tell people the why of what you're doing.
Mhm.
And you would, they in great detail. And like for me, it's about really what the client wants. You know, defining really what the client wants. And you have to interview your best clients, the ones that are kind of your friends, that'll tell you the truth, you know what I mean? And what is it you're wanting? And then ask a probing question. And I did that for a while. And to define what it is that, what are the real problems, and what is the what is the solution? What does the client want as the solution? What's the why of what we're doing? And then that would be the pulling, and you want to inform your people of that. And then the pushing would be maybe a key performance index or some type of metric that you're watching within your organization. And what I've been able to do is tie those two together.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like, here's what the client wants, and these are metrics that will provide those needs that they have. This will satisfy those needs. And I like to stack it from the bottom to the top, so that we know with the top is, of course, the client, and then how do we get there? And then really and truly, like, the manager's metrics are his subjects metrics. And it all goes back up to the pulling, what the client wants. And that was one of the most exciting things that I have done, I think, in putting those two together. And again, I'll tell you how, Karla knows me. I'm probably not the smartest guy in the room, but this was almost like I'm sitting here thinking, and I got onto that in my brain about, how to really defining the why is what I was trying to do. And I come across and I was seeing the importance between the two. I'm putting together a presentation Thursday. I have a meeting I do all hands meeting at the last Friday of every month, where we all get together and we just go over things as a group, and I lead that. And I'm clicking, and lo and behold, in my feed, there is a Harvard review that talks about pushing and pulling and the effectiveness of it, that they had just done and released like that week. And it defined everything in a concise manner that was so exciting for me to see that. But I was on to it, and it's like, boom, it shows up right then, and it just really put it all together. Some of the other things about setting the metrics, it wasn't in there, but just the overall effectiveness of businesses that do pulling and pushing, they're way more effective.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard that exact terminology, but it really reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with the Johari diagram. It's used in business, it's used in parenting, it's used in everything, but you're always working with a 4-quadrant place of nurture and structure, so that you're working with both. And so when you've got this 4-quadrant thing, it's like high nurture, high discipline, that's great. But if you have high discipline, low nurture, oh, you've got an issue. If you
Yeah.
have high structure, and so what I'm hearing as you describe this is pushing and pulling is high on both sides of the coin. It's that that structure piece, but making sure you know the needs.
Yes.
The ability to meet the needs, but I got to know the needs.
And what makes it so easy for me in that area is like, is that it's going to be very difficult to argue. Like if somebody doesn't want to, do their metrics, they probably don't belong. Because I can't, I know what the outcome is because I've done a lot of work on figuring that out. And if you're not willing to do the work that's going to get the outcome, then, it's probably, this isn't your thing. And
Right.
so it makes decision making easier. And then you set the tone, and it's not this thing for that guy and that thing for the other guy. It's all the same. And it's very easy to manage. It's very easy to keep it top of mind presence, because there's really like 4 metrics that make it all up, and you can keep that in your head at all times, and you can kind of do little things where you measure things based off those 4 little metrics, and how would this impact that? So is it good or is it bad? So it's really been very enlightening, and it's made things a lot easier to make decisions that are really healthy decisions because of, kind of those questions and that legwork.
Well, I think what you're really describing that is critical as a leader. It is a way you've found to bring clarity. And again, when things aren't clear and it's fuzzy, you're going to get fuzzy results.
Yeah.
So you bring more clarity in, more definition in, it's helpful on everyone. So it sounds like it's a great thing. It'd be cool, Philip, if you were able to include the link to that Harvard statement, so people could read up on that, because it sounds like it was very succinct, and that could be a motivational piece for all of us to read.
For sure. I'll absolutely share it out. Matter of fact, I looked at it just a couple of days ago, so I know it's still easily, I can find it easily. Yeah. So another thing is setting goals. And one of the things that I'm always careful about when I do set goals, and I learned this, this smart way of doing it. I'm sure every business person's seen that. But you got to be careful with your goal setting, because what happens when you reach that goal? If it's a lot of work to get another goal, that probably wasn't the goal. So what I have learned, and we'll talk about it, like setting what we call rocks, and that's a quarterly task. I think Vern Harnish kind of coined that. But you want something that is really big, and then you break big down into pieces, because sometimes it's very hard to set a goal. And if it takes you 3 weeks to set the goal, and then you're going to accomplish it in the next 9 weeks, well, it's not very effective. But if you could set a goal big and then break it down into pieces, and then have quarters where you're knocking out that piece of that goal, is the way I like to do it, because of the work sometimes it takes to really get an effective goal. A lot of times it's not that easy. It sounds easy, but it's not that easy. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's crazy, Philip, that you put this slide up, because I think it was on Tuesday, I led a little mini workshop for high school seniors. And a lot of them, even at this season in their life, they have no idea how to set goals. And yet they realize that they've got to sort of get with that program. And so I use this very acronym because, and it was so funny, I actually had them practice right there. I said, think of one goal for this summer, and then let's write it down, this acronym, so that you tell me how it's specific, how you're going to measure it, how you're going to attain it, all that. Well, and I've given pretty good instruction. Well, I had them each share. They still didn't know how to do it. So what that told me, and of course I know they're young, but most people think they are being specific when they say, one of the little gals said, well, I want to get healthier. That was her specific goal.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, girlfriend, that is not your specific goal. That's an overall goal. Now we need to break down what are ways to attain that, specifically. So I love that. And as simple as like you're saying, we've all seen it. The reality is we're probably not using it.
That's right. And the relativity is one of the ones that I would look at first. Because what I've seen, this is all anecdotal for me, is where we're going to, and I've assigned things that I wanted to see happen that were pretty, well, obviously they weren't specific enough. I just busted myself because, but we have spent a lot of time on things that really were not relevant. So before I even allow my team to go to work on something, basically we have an outcome statement. When we're done, this is what we're going to produce, because you can spend a lot of time in meetings eating pizza and hanging out and not actually come out with anything. So that's something that's really very meaningful for me, because, you know, anecdotally, we wasted a lot of time on things that maybe shouldn't have ever even been done.
Yeah, no, I probably am a little bit like you on that. I have lots of things I could get excited about, but that doesn't mean they're relevant for right now, what I need to be doing.
Yeah, and breaking it into small enough pieces where it can actually get done. I
Right.
still have to lead my team in that area like you would not believe. I have got to constantly stay on top of things. It's just crazy.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say that even when I went over with my little teenagers, one of the things that I reinforced to them is we could have a beautiful acronym and you actually have it right there, like you did it good and measuring it, etc. But if you don't have a form of accountability and bringing it in front of you on a regular basis, you will fade away from it.
Yeah.
And, I always laugh and say, when you look at yourself in the mirror before you head out the door, you look pretty good. But you know what? By the end of the day, you thought you were looking good all day, and you look back in the mirror and man, your hair is this, you've got something between your teeth. We need to have regular look in the mirror times.
Yeah.
And that's especially true with our goals. Just because we thought we were aiming at it, I need to, I'll say set an alarm on your calendar, put it in here to periodically on a regular basis reassess.
Yeah. Time blocking, is another real effective thing. It's just amazing when you have a deadline, set a deadline. For me, it goes in my calendar or on a to-do. And when that to-do's deadline gets close, all of a sudden I can't make any more excuses, and I just get in there and do it. And it isn't even that bad on me, like all that dread or whatever's going on isn't even there. It's like, oh gosh, I got to finish it. So I jump on it. But we like what we call rocks. That's a 90-day thing. A goal would be much larger. A rock would be a 90-day push, and then to-dos would be like weekly or bi-weekly things that have deadlines on them. What you're saying, keep it in front of you, small bites, and then you can actually get a ton done if you're just disciplined a little bit, and it isn't as bad as you might think.
Well, and you're also working with how your brain works, because our brain actually really learns best and we create new neural pathways. When I say it's the power of the itty bitty, it is better to do a little thing consistently than to try to do a big overhaul.
Yeah.
Because your brain will push back if you try to do a big overhaul and you'll end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so you sort of have to trick it. And so consistency building in those to-dos and then those rocks start doing, you're building a real strong neural pathway of reinforcement. And once you get that pathway carved in your brain, you start to see productivity go to a whole nother level.
Yeah, for sure. And like I set annual themes for myself, and they of course bleed over into the company because it's very difficult for me they're so closely related. And sometimes they're almost, again, providential. They're beyond me. And this year, I think it was because we're doing, like everybody thinks what you got to do to be successful is work hard, but it's really what you're working on. That's 50% of the equation. And the other 25% is who you're working with. You know, how much collaboration, how much energy are you burning just trying to get something done because of relationships or not good communication. And then the other 25% is working hard, but there's work could be done with intensity or it could be done with consistency. And intensity will burn you out. You will not be able to maintain. But again, just pack. I always say, yeah, after 20 years, you'll be an overnight success. 20 years of consistency, you'll be an overnight success. And, those are, again, a lot of things that I've just learned. Another thing, because I'm in the technology industry, I see this all the time, and I want to bring this up because there's been a lot of studies. This is old from 2016, but it's very relative. If you run antiquated technology, it's a huge waste, up to about 40 minutes a day. It's true. Another one is that, hiring people, if you've got a rundown looking office, when I go in, I do sales, of course, and I meet businesses and all that. And one thing that when I look at their office, and if it's really run down and it's really this or that, they're not going to be a good client most of the time. And if I see that, I know that employees see that. And so it's important to keep things fresh. And when we're dealing with the younger generations, their technology at home a lot of times is better than what they have at office. They will make business decisions or employment decisions based off of those things. And another thing is talking about, there's a lot of cybersecurity problems out there right now. And client retention. I call it like the data supply chain, where you're doing business with people and you're sharing sensitive data. That has become a paramount issue in the business world. And then just sales and reputation. This is this stat, and again, this is older. I did this a long time ago, but I still don't look at the number. Just think of it more of the importance of 57% of people think small businesses are more competitive when they use modern technology. You want to leverage technology, and that is something that it can be done. When I meet a client, they're like, "Oh God, everything's it's terrible, terrible, terrible." It's so hard. We're so specific. They start. Then I know their technology is bad.
That makes so much sense. And really, to be relevant in the marketplace, you need it for that. But also now technology continues to improve, and it really can buy back for you.
Oh yeah.
Time, energy, and efficiency. So I totally agree with that. And there's no such thing as, really, probably every couple of years, you need to reassess your whole system, because of how fast development is on your specific areas.
Yeah, with our clients, depending upon their size and the nature of their business, I do technology business reviews that do technology road mapping. Some we do quarterly, some biannually, some annually. So yeah, I think that's important. So I think another thing, and we're going to probably go over a little bit today, and I'm going to allow it. I usually am pretty strict, but I'm just so interested in this topic, and having you is a lot of good information for folks. So, but accountability, I think that is so important in relationships. And I'm a big Patrick Lencioni. He wrote a bunch of books. One of them is like the 5 dysfunctions of the team, and he starts it with basically relationships are built on trust, which is true 100%. But I would even go back and say that trust is based off good communication.
Definitely. I would say it's communication plus actions, because people can talk the game, but unless the action is following through what they've said, then it can actually destroy trust. So, that obviously, as a counselor, when I am working with couples or families where trust has been broken, obviously we've got to get to rebuild trust. We have to have real clear communication but follow through. And I definitely love that slide where you said accountability. All of us are, again, it's sort of like the perspective, if I don't look in the mirror, I don't know what I look like. Well, there's also the perspective that other people's eyes will see things I can't see. I'd like to tell people no one on the planet can be objective about themselves. Because in order to be objective about yourself, you'd have to be outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So we all need accountability because I need another set of eyes looking at me to give me feedback in the areas that may be blind to me, I may have minimized because of my personality type. I don't think they're important. So any successful company, marriage, family, there has to be a two-way street on building accountability. And it takes a lot of humility to get into an accountable relationship. And a lot of us don't like that. But if we're going to get healthy and grow, we've got to grow in our humility by being accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And, and at the end of the day, I'm very, driven, but, I also want to have a good work-life balance, and I want to have a good relationship when you go home. And the cool thing about any of this, all ships rise with the tide. And I say that meaning that, that if you can work on one area of your life and you get that kind of moving in the right direction, that's fuel. And it's probably dopamine hit, whatever. If you got down, you're a brain person, I get it. But yeah, so I mean, you're getting a charge, you're getting, like a energy charge that you can parlay and spend that in other areas. And it's easy to spend it, it's readily available.
Well, and I think what also beside that dopamine charge, the way our brain is wired, each person is four parts. We are physical, we're emotional, we're relational, and we are spiritual. Even if you're not a churchgoer, you still are spiritual because you're wondering what's the meaning of life? Where am I making a contribution? And all of those are intertwined. So I can't be working in one area and it not impact the others.
Yeah.
So just what you're saying, Philip, no matter which door you come in, the physical door, like for example, if you started working out and man, you're building your strength, and you hadn't been doing that in a while, you're proud of yourself. And all of a sudden, you're going to want to be with people more. So you're relational. You're going to be more energetic. You're going to be emotionally happier. You're going to probably be more feeling like you're going to have an impact. So the one simple thing of you working out is actually impacting all these other areas because of how you're designed.
Yeah. And one of the things that we follow a book called Traction, and they calls it the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And one of the things, you want to have consistent meetings, and the heart of that meeting is what they call IDS: identify, discuss, solve. And these solutions go in. You talked about communication plus action. That's the foundation of what they're doing, because they're putting in a to-do. And that to-do could be a rock, it could be something that's going to take 90 days, it could be something that takes a week. And but they're assigned to people, and then there's accountability that they're held to. And that is probably, we did that probably 10 years ago, 10 years ago, and that has been a very effective means. And it's not really, when you look at it and you read it, you're like, wow, very common sense. But and once you get it going, it's like you train people's brains to think that way. And
Exactly.
yeah.
100%. Amen that. And, that's where we always have to recognize that my biology really is a component of everything I do. And people do need to see that brain piece is something you can work with and help people sort of go the direction they want to go. And a lot of the tips you've shared today are really great brain pieces. and you're showing how to utilize them in the workplace.
Yeah. I think one of the neatest things about how I think just we're made is, if you'll spend the time to think about what you want, this is what I tell people all the time. I tell myself this. I'm like, what do I really want? And there's some song, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And I have no idea who even sings it, but I sing that little part in my head, or I'll say that out loud, because I think that if you'll spend a minute really defining what you want, and all you got to do is just keep asking questions. Every time you get to, I want this. Well, why do I want that? What would that look like? Just keep going. I think that automatically, without really even a lot of work, you begin to work on that, and you
Yeah.
begin to kind of make decisions based on that. And then you start to talk about that, and you start to hang out with people that are interested in that or whatever. And it's just like this natural thing that can start with just, what do I want? And man, you talk about some freedom and some awesome thing that we've been given and even where we live and everything, we have the ability to work towards things we want, no matter who you are, at every level.
Well, I want to reinforce that. And this is something to be thinking about as a leader and even your employees, is that when you think, what do I want? That immediately takes you to your upper right brain in your prefrontal cortex. And that's where we really know who we are. And so I'm right there in the core of my essence when I ask that question. Then the other cool thing is the brain does not know the difference between past, present, and future. So if I've captured this, what I want, and I start to see that and envision it, the brain actually thinks it's happening right now. So it starts acting and following through on the very thing that you are thinking and imagining in that core. So
Wow.
there, as a man thinketh, so is he. There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
That is very much cohesive with how brain science works.
And, I basically came about that anecdotally. I mean, honestly.
Mhm.
But it is weird. Again, sometimes you get things that you don't deserve, like understanding. And I'm sure I read it in a book, but it didn't hit. And this leads me to inspecting what you expect. And I'm gonna tell you one thing that, you get this person, you really have a lot of confidence in them, you have a lot of faith in them, and you don't hold them accountable. You don't check on them. It's like your kids. They got to have a routine. They got to have a check-in. They got to have somebody watching, because what'll happen is they'll begin to fall off.
Of course.
And it's so for me, like where I am as and I've got several things going, not just this, the IT company. I'm busy. And so what I have to do is I have to find very easy ways to be able to inspect what I expect. Like simple, quick, just bang, I can check that, boom, I got it. And I encourage business owners to inspect what they expect. Don't think the person's got it and you can walk away, because, and again, it's not bad. This is good for the people. This is not bad for the people. This is not oppressive. This is, showing them a better way, because you have opportunities, because you're not doing it. I always think about the person digging the ditch. They'll get off sideways because they're not standing outside the ditch to see which way it's going. You can go to those people and you can help them become more effective. They could be doing a lot of things that is just burning up energy and it's not producing results. So that inspection is not a negative thing. That is a positive thing. And a lot of times, people have to trust you, in order to accept that sometimes. But if you got that relationship right, they are like, well, if he's coming, he's saying, he's asking, this isn't something that, this is meaningful. And if you can ever get there, people will respond to you. And, you've heard the term, you tell me it's raining, but really you're peeing on my leg. It's probably not everybody's probably heard that. Have you ever heard that, Karla?
I definitely think, or just jumping to that thing about, you're right. We need that kind of feedback, and that's what accountability, and it is the job of the leader to do that inspect. But what you are good at, Philip, in your company is you are so clear on strengthening your relationship with your people that when you inspect, They know it's coming out of a motive of care for them and the company. Some managers need to work harder on building that relational commitment to their employees so that when they do bring in the structure of inspection, it's not seen as a hammer, it's seen as a helping hand to empower them. I know on our website, Hard in Life, HARDIN, life, LIFE.com. In our free download section, we have a lot of goal things, and it's sort of, we use all this goal thing within our family, and they're the same kind of ways you could use them in business. And when we would sit down with our girls when they were growing up, it was because our relationship part is we cared. And then our goal sheets were that inspect. Hey, how are y'all doing? How do you feel about that? Do you need to retweak them? Hey, that's okay. You learned something there. So I do believe those things are really critical for helping life grow to its best.
Yeah. I had a guy tell me one time that it was on a legacy planning thing I did, and really good stuff, the most comprehensive thing I've ever seen in that area. And but he said that when he met with his family, he started it with, how can I love you more?
Yeah,
And
excellent statement.
yeah, because love, in my way of thinking, or the type of love that he was speaking of there, I know there's 6 types in the Greek, but it was really, I'm putting you ahead of myself. So tell me how I can help you more. Or, that was his premise when he started. And he said that changed the dynamic extremely. When they really understood what he was asking, about what it was, it put him very, submissive almost. He's the leader, but yet he's very submissive. He's like, you got to tell me. And that's been very helpful for me, for sure.
Well, this has been so great. And I'm going to have to pop off in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
I've got another appointment, but just seeing this tough slide, eliminate toxic employees.
Yep. Gotta
It's
go.
a hard thing to do, but you got to do it
Yep.
because you can't lose your team because of it.
Yep.
And implementing routines and block time, you've already established that really well. That works with the brain and it keeps people safe, believe it or not. If you keep people feeling safe in their skin and in their body, man, you're going to get the best of who they are. So I love that. So,
and for everyone that's watched this, I'm gonna do a risk assessment using that DISC profile. I'll do that for them and some of their key top employees. Just let me know by June the 30th. And I'd like to, of course, thank Karla and Christy and everyone for joining. And if you have questions or anything that you would like to follow up on, if you'd like to talk to Karla, and again, it's Hardin Life, HARDIN life.com. That's their website. I highly recommend them and their services. You can just email security@AskBIS and we'll do that. And Christy, we're going to probably skip questions. If they'll email questions, we'll ask them.
Okay.
thanks.
I know it went over, but it was a good topic. I feel a lot better, Karla. I don't know about you. I hope everybody does.
I love it. You and we can hammer at this stuff all day because it's so much what we both love. And I do hope everyone's gotten a few nuggets that they can go and take back and really use to help them have the joy of being that leader that is reaching their goals and people are loving being a part of the team.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.